Hi everybody and welcome to night number 25 of History Bedtime Stories. In bed, in our pajamas, we're talking about the Detroit Zoo. Now the very first Detroit Zoo opens in 1883 at the corner of Michigan and Trumbull in Detroit's Corktown neighborhood. That zoo is the product of an entrepreneurial Detroiter buying out a bankrupt circus. The zoo only operates about a year before many of the animals are sent to Belle Isle for what becomes the second Detroit Zoo, and the structures that were built become the original Detroit Horse Exchange. The Belle Isle Zoo operates for many years, but during that time, influential Detroiters are sort of like, little chip on the shoulder. It's not good enough. It's not big enough. It's not exciting enough. It's not putting us on scale with all of these important zoos in the world. And just like having a ballet or a symphony or an art museum, it was thought that having a great zoo really put you in a different tier of city, and Detroit wanted some of that. So the Detroit Zoological Society forms in 1911. They issue super cool certificates to their members, and their original board boasts some pretty important names: Henry Ford, Edwin Denby, Frank Hecker, all original members. And these guys get together and they purchase a 200-acre piece of land just at the Rouge River near the railroad tracks. The plan is to put the first zoo there. But for unknown reasons, it doesn't pan out. What we do know is that the Zoological Society sells all of the land to Henry Ford, who goes on to build Greenfield Village on that plot of land. But they sell at a little bit of a profit, and they take that money and they buy their second site. This time, it's just south of 7 Mile Road, near Palmer Park, along Woodward Avenue in the north end of Detroit. And it's a perfect spot for a zoo. You're lined up to the park, you've got the ponds, there's plans for a botanical garden, and the Zoological Society, which is a nonprofit group, offers it all to the city of Detroit. They say, we'll build the zoo, we'll finance it, you just have to chip in $100,000. Detroit City Council votes it down. They say, we're not spending that money. Why should we fork over the money? All of you rich guys in the Zoological Society are going to build the zoo whether we pay or not, so meh, we're not going to pay. Well, the Zoological Society is really kind of pissed off by this. They think, why should we front all of the money if we're not getting any municipal support? And they end up selling all of that land at a profit to build the Palmer Park and Detroit Golf Club homes. Very posh, very rich neighborhood, absolutely beautiful. So now they're looking for their third piece of land. And at this time, the assessor of taxes for the city of Detroit, a former blacksmith, a pain in the butt, and just arduous, difficult, boring, set-in-his-ways man named John C. Nagel gets involved. And he's saying, listen, where are you buying that land? What's that land worth? Maybe I need to take a look at all of this. Maybe I need to be involved. So the Zoological Society buys land outside of the city of Detroit at 10 Mile and Woodward and Royal Oak. They buy a lot of it, and a little bit is donated by this very eccentric farmer who had massive horse farms on the land. They purchase it, and they are trying to get a millage approved to tax Oakland, Macomb, and Wayne County to build their zoo. And in enters the tax assessor, Nagel, who's like, Detroit and Wayne County is at this time the most populous. And he says they're going to bear 90% of the burden of the cost for the zoo and not have it in their county. It will in fact be in Oakland County, being at 10 Mile and Woodward. And he says we shouldn't do this. He goes for 2 years boycotting this. He even gets a referendum put on the ballot that is so confusing in the way it's worded. People start getting really angry. Luckily, that referendum is voted down 2-1, and we are able to start constructing the zoo. It takes 11 more years to complete. But when it opens on August 1st, 1928, guess who's acting mayor of Detroit? Yep, John C. Nagel. He is late to be the ribbon cutter. He is late to the opening of the zoo, and so he pulls his car in behind the bear exhibit. The Detroit Zoo holds an amazing distinction. It's the first zoo in the world to be cageless in its exhibits, to try to have exhibits that felt like a natural habitat, and use things like moats and shrub hedges to keep the animals in place. Well, Nigel pulls in behind the bear exhibit, gets out of his car, and kind of at a swift walk goes walking up to officially give the speech and open the zoo, and he's met by a polar bear. A very large, very angry polar bear named Morris, who had jumped the moat, swam across, reared up on its hind legs, and was basically ready to eat the acting mayor. Nigel, being ever the politician, puts out his hand to shake, saying the polar bear is simply the welcoming committee. At the same time, a whole bunch of keepers for the zoo kind of rush the polar bear and are able, with noise and kind of flailing, rush it back into the moat and back into its exhibit. And about 2 hours after they were supposed to, they opened the zoo. Now, the zoo gets 150,000 people in the first year alone. And some of its most famous and, I guess, awe-inspiring inhabitants include a pair of lion cubs. The lion rock face was actually expanded during the Great Depression by the WPA work projects. This is a postcard of mine from 1931. It says, "Simba the lion, find the king of beasts in an imposing den of huge rocks. No bars separate you from him, and he seems almost close enough to touch." There was an elephant named Paulina among the very first elephants when the zoo opened in 1928, and for a nickel, people could take a ride. She eventually retired, and when she did, she had given over 500,000 rides to Michiganders. There were rhinoceroses, the African safari, which included zebras, giraffes, and wildebeest, as well as several bird varieties. A birdhouse, still in its original location and original structure today. And monkey shows. Now, the chimpanzee shows have been discontinued since the 1980s because of concerns about ethical treatment of animals. But from the time the zoo opened until 1982, you could see monkeys dressing up, wearing costumes, tying their own shoes, and even roller skating, as shown in this postcard. You've been to the Detroit Zoo recently or long ago. We'd love to see those photos down in the comment. Give us your family photos from the zoo, and we'll reward you handsomely. This week, instead of stickers, we've got City of Detroit flag pins. Super cool. Show off your love for the city. We'll direct message you for prize winners. Give us a share and a like, and we'll see you tomorrow at 8. I almost forgot, for the love of all things holy, wash your hands.